Today, we are challenging an institutional practice in India that is so normal that we don't even talk about it. It is part of our lives, and because it is continuing for so long, no one is challenging it seriously. This practice is ruining our constitutional fundamentals. It is ruining the institutions of India. On March 8th this year, a 26-year-old man, Akash Delison, he died in a hospital in Tamil Nadu, allegedly for injuries sustained in police custody. You would have guessed, we are talking about deaths in police custody in India. Weeks later, his body remains in the morgue because his family is refusing to do the last rites until accountability is fixed. This symbolism is stark. In a civilization where death rituals are sacrosanct, justice has been made a precondition for dignity. It's a contest between human rights, a dignity, and setting the system's accountability. And this is not an isolated act of grief. It is a political statement about the failure of enforcement of Constitution of India. Akash's death sits alongside others that have accumulated into a very troubling pattern. Recently in Sivaganga district, again in Tamil Nadu, a 27-year-old Ajit Kumar, he was a temple watchman, a security guard. He died within days of being detained in a robbery case. Later, Central Bureau of Investigation found that the charges were baseless. His post-mortem recorded nearly 40 injuries, but the life of a poor man has been taken away. In 2020, Jairaj and his son Benix, they died after alleged custodial torture for a minor lockdown violation. And this prompted a very rare judicial severity. And this year, 9 policemen were sentenced to death. So these cases that I just mentioned, they are just few of them. And they differ in details, but they converge on a single fact: the use of coercive violence as a routine instrument of policing in India. If you gather the numbers across the country, across the civil society of India, the numbers reinforce a very dark narrative. Civil society has recorded 1,731 custodial deaths in 2019. That's roughly 5 a day. In 2022 alone, nearly 2,000 prisoners died in judicial custody and 159 classified as unnatural deaths. Official data from the Human Rights Commission of India indicates approximately 2,400 such deaths in 2023, which next year rose to 2,739 deaths. Between 2025 and mid-March 2026 this year, about 170 custodial deaths are recorded. These figures are not just statistics. They are revealing a continuity, a scale, and an institutional, a societal tolerance and normalization of deaths happening in the custody of the government. Now one may say that my stories are all skewed towards Tamil Nadu. No, they are recent. But then if you see the distribution of the numbers that I gave for last 5 years, these are states as Bihar, Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh, and these repeatedly appear with high incidences. More significantly, the victims are disproportionately drawn from marginalized communities of India like Dalits, Adivasis, Muslims, migrant laborers. Therefore, what this is showing is the custodial deaths, rather generally custodial violence, it mirrors India's social hierarchy. It does not disrupt it. It is actually cementing that this stratification continues to divide India. It continues to construct India's social fabric. This persistent demands a structural explanation. So who would give that? Let's see why this is being pursued. The origins of India's policing system lie in the Police Act of 1861, which was enacted after the revolt of 1857. So the primary purpose was colonial power structure. The purpose was not citizen service but imperial control. The colonial state required a force that could discipline Indian population, suppress dissent, and extract absolute compliance to the crown. Now, the transition to independent India did not dismantle this architecture. It merely repurposed it, and the coercive orientation remains largely intact. But independent India layered constitutional safeguards over this structure. Article 21 guarantees the right to life and personal liberty. So both are existing together. Like from the judicial pronouncement from D.K. Basu versus State of West Bengal to the 2020 directives on CCTV installation in police stations, they have attempted to regulate police conduct. Yet, the implementation have been absolute uneven. Thousands of police stations lack functional surveillance systems. Cameras exist, coverage is partial, and the storage of the footage is inadequate. The Supreme Court's 2006 directive to establish police complaint authorities have breaches across many states in India. That's another thing. So that was one part of the big story, the custodial deaths. The other part is the torture. So India lacks a standalone law criminalizing torture. Offences are prosecuted under general provision of penal code, but it dilutes and weakens deterrence. Witness protection remains fragile, we know that. Victims' family face intimidation, procedural delay, and financial strain. The result is predictable. We can see low conviction rates and a culture of impunity. The Global Torture Index classifies India as a high-risk country for torture and ill treatment, alongside jurisdictions marked by systemic violence. United Nations special rapporteurs have invoked the doctrine of jus cogens, under which the prohibition of tortures is absolute and non-negotiable. Their call for India to ratify the Convention Against Torture remains unanswered. The gap between India's constitutional ideals and its enforcement practices are now a matter of global record. So what is going on as a philosophy? If you look at the theory, if you look at the societal and the cultural lens, Thomas Hobbes argued that individuals cede power to the state in exchange of a security, and that creates a sovereign that prevents the chaos in the state of nature. So we all have given up, sacrificed our freedom, our independence to do things so that the society remains cohesive, harmonious, safe, and cultured. But Hobbes, according to his philosophy, also assumes that sovereign's legitimacy rests on its ability to protect life, in which case, in India's case, it is failing to do so. So when India fails itself, they themselves become the source of arbitrary violence, and that is where the social contract breaches itself. In India's custodial deaths, one sees this, and it is not an absence of state, but it's an excuse. It's a power restrained by accountability. And that is where the fundamental problem with India is. Now look at the other side. The operational logic of policing reinforces these tendencies. Officers are under severe pressure to deliver results in a system which is burdened by delays, understaffing, and a very low conviction rates. Our public prosecutors are unable to catch hold of the criminals. I am reminded of the example of Japan, where the conviction rate is about 98%. So if the public prosecutor takes up a case, it is sure shot catching the criminal. What happens in India as a result of what I am saying is, the torture has become a shortcut to extract confessions. There's another point to it. There's another layer to it. Encounters. Often it's a euphemism for extrajudicial killings, bypassing the judicial process altogether. In several states, officers associated with such actions have been valorized, glorified as encounter specialists, and they receive promotions and, sadly, public approval. So the incentives are thus aligned not with the due process, but with the demonstrable outcomes. So the state is failing as a constitution, upholding the constitution, because the prosecution is unable to convict the real criminals. And society as a whole has been looking towards extrajudicial processes, whether it is torture or actual killings, as a source of justice. The everyday face of the system is visible beyond custodial deaths. Now let's see what's happening on the street. If you remember, during COVID-19 lockdown, there were reports in cities like Delhi and Noida which documented police beating very small-time vegetable vendors, the delivery boys, and the very ordinary citizens who are actually delivering goods to the struck families. Videos showed individuals forced to crawl on the road, slapped and humiliated, punished. And these are not hardened offenders, but usual essential service providers. So why is policing so harsh? The justification was enforcement, and the method was coercion, and the underlying message was very clear. The citizens is a subject to be disciplined. So what are these trends we are talking about? The other end of the spectrum where any nation can easily slide into are termed as banana republics. Those are the countries where the institutions are weak, the accountability is selective, and the coercive power of policing of the government of the state is personalized. So in such systems, police violence becomes a tool of governance. Extrajudicial actions are normalized as it is becoming in India, or rather it is in India. And it is justified in the name of efficiency of the law and the security protection that it is providing to the public. On one side, it is creating a trust in the public, and other side, the public trust erodes because the legality becomes contingent. We are seeing this case in the encounter of 5 rapists in Hyderabad. I think that was in year 2023. The public didn't object to the killings of the rapists and being brought into the process of legality. So if the conviction rates are low, if the criminals are allowed to get out on bail, if the law is not enforced, then public moves towards extrajudicial processes of bringing in justice. So somewhere India is fitting into the category of a borderline case of banana republic. But India possesses a robust constitutional framework, an independent judiciary, a vibrant civil society, yet its policing practices, particularly in custodial settings, exhibit traits that are associated with weak institutional orders. And this coexistence of strong formal structure and a weak enforcement, this hybrid condition, democratic in design but coercive in practice, is troubling. Not that there are no solutions. There are solutions in terms of UN Convention Against Torture, and that created a binding legal framework. Then there are Mendes principles, which shift interrogation practices from coercion to evidence-based methods. We have to strengthen the National Human Rights Commission and ensuring the independence of oversight bodies that would enhance the accountability of the enforcement bodies. Now the problem is that the human rights have been severely violated in cases of Kashmir, while there have been controversy when terrorists have been let free because they have used human rights laws to their purposes. And therefore, the human rights as a process have been demonized in India. We do have a solution about time-bound judicial inquiries into custodial deaths. Why is that not being implemented? Why is that not made as a full transparent process for the families? So India stands between these trajectories. The choice for Indians is not abstract. It is about states' accountability, and that is what we are seeing in this particular case of Akash Delison, whose body remains unclaimed because all constitutions, all laws, all policing enforcements have to bring in dignity to the citizens of the country. With those troubling thoughts, I leave you until next week. Stay safe, stay informed, dutifully ask questions. At the end of the day, somebody has to stand up. Bye for now.
Everything's fine on 93.9 Dublin South FM.